We've got some.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah.
Yes. That sounds super interesting.
I love it. I can't wait. Earlier, I told FONZI, should this be the title? And he's, yes, I want to be like hypnotized. Yeah. So we'll see if that happens.
I'm not going to lie. There's two topics here that I love. Email marketing. And honestly, I don't feel I know much about it. So I'm super curious to dig into it. And obviously all that hypnotist
mindset, baby.
Yeah,
all right, let's go.
That's pretty cool.
Before we get started, guys, please don't forget, go ahead and subscribe to the Content is Profit podcast. Smash that subscribe button and follow us on social media at BIZBROS. Go send us a DM. We're happy to respond.
That's right, guys. And if you find this episode impactful, which I am sure you will, don't forget to share with everybody and leave a 5-star review.
So I can't tell you how excited we are for today's 2v2 episode. A few episodes back, we had the pleasure to have Gavin Bell and his incredible accent on the show. Once we asked him who we should bring to the Content is Profit, he immediately introduced us to this incredible pair, also from the UK.
That's right. Today's guests have an amazing background as hypnotists and mind readers, and currently help hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs understand the mindset behind email marketing. These email marketing heroes use their superpowers to provide solutions and a fresh new look to excel in the art of emailing your audience.
They help you create the game plan, get your first 5,000 subscribers, and have an incredible community called The League, where they teach how to make sales through psychology-driven email marketing and surveys. This is music to our ears.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and they sold over $1 million in online products. So I think they kind of know what they're doing.
Definitely they know what they're doing. Guys, please welcome the Dave Hills of email marketing, the Lior Suchard of your email service, copy mind benders, and incredible handsome email marketing heroes, Rob and Kennedy!
Well, if there was a prize for the best introduction that we could possibly imagine.
Wow. We need to come clean here. We need to confess something. We had no idea who Dave Hills and Lior Suchard were. We Googled them so we could put them in the intro.
Do you guys know who they are? That's the question.
I know Lior Suchard. I know him very well. Yeah. But
all right, cool.
So we literally Google the best hypnotist or mind reader in the world, and that's what happened. So, I think it should be you guys. And again, This is probably not the topic of the show. We're going to dive into mindset and email marketing and what you guys learned in the past to do what you guys do now. So again, thank you guys for joining us. We're extremely excited to have you guys here. Is an honor, really.
Well, the first thing we've learned is that we need to work on our SEO for the best hypnotist and mind reader in the world, because that should have been the Robin Kennedy of email marketing. It's Robin Kennedy, surely.
There we go. That's what I'm saying.
I love it. Normally the intro, FONZI here is the one that does this beautiful thing. We call it the FONZify it, and today the pressure was on me, so I hope I did all right.
I think you did pretty good.
Yes,
pretty good.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you. So guys, tell us a little bit. Who are you? Why you guys do what you do? Why that background, and now why email marketing? This is exciting.
That's a lot of questions. Huh?
Something to do, isn't it? Yeah. Something to do. Something to do. Our background is a little weird. We became friends about not far off 20 years ago. We met at a convention, a conference for magicians of all things, and entertainer folk, and just hit it off and became friends. And I'm working as a stage hypnotist, traveling around the place doing that. Kennedy touring around, performing at events and after dinner banquets and that kind of thing as a mind reader. And so we both work in the vein of what we call a psychological entertainment, if you like, but in totally different arenas, totally not competition with each other at all in any sense. And so our stuff kind of works really well hand in hand. And along the way, whilst I'm off traveling around performing my show and Kennedy's off traveling around performing his show, totally independently, we realized that in order for that to work, we had to become good at business. You know, like when you're an entertainer, it is at the end of the day learning branding, marketing, selling yourself. And most of the time when people go ahead and inquire and they give you their email address and they're interested in having you at their event, you need to learn how to follow up with them, and email was the best way to do it. And so independently and without talking about it, we both became obsessed with the ability to convert prospects into customers of any description by email. And then one day, after a couple of years of doing it, we swapped notes. This is probably in like 2009 or something like that. We like swapped notes and said, you know, I've spent a few years doing this email marketing thing. And Kenny was like, so have I. We've got this thing called Aweber, which is what we were using at the time. And I think it was the only one that existed for doing email marketing. And yeah, and we sort of swapped notes and that was it. And then years and years and years went by of working not together in business, but like working together, swapping notes and testing stuff and trying stuff until a few years ago, it just made sense for us to start sharing this stuff.
That's such a cool story though.
Yeah, I love it. I love the origin of everything. It's like it became a passion for you guys. I feel like a lot of people's passion is like, you know, their business per se, like what they're doing, and they forget about the marketing side of it, right? And I love how you guys fell into that and then organically just started sharing and, I mean, build what you guys have built nowadays, which is awesome.
I think one of the things that you mentioned, Rob, is super important for those listening, right? Like we go and we used to work with a lot of like brick and mortars, and people see like their marketing as a totally foreign thing. Like the communication with their audience is like totally external to them. And it's like, it's sort of such a vital part of like the business, right? It's like what brings people in. And you guys, even though you guys had that background that like so many people don't see it maybe as like a brick and mortar business, but it is. You guys are making a living out of it. You immediately recognize that this is something that you guys had to start learning and start implementing right away, like a few years back, and now look at what you guys have achieved, and it's amazing. So I think like that is a very important point to kind of like make that connection from the very beginning.
Right. And what's really amazing and what's really kind of feels a little bit like we're cheating a bit, because the skills of marketing and email marketing and is all about getting into people's heads. So we literally didn't learn any new skills, very few new skills. We literally transplanted the skills of hypnotizing people, which means, you know, getting into their head and getting and influencing people, and also of reading their minds and influencing them to do what I do. We took those same skills and we just applied them. It's amazing how in our brains, psychologically speaking, we silo our information. There are amazing skills that we have that we use in different parts of our worlds and different parts of our lives, that if we just pulled them all together, we'd be more successful. And that's all we've done. We've taken the things we've refined over nearly 20 years each to influence other people, and decided actually email marketing does not need to be a numbers game. You do not need 100,000 people on your email list. In fact, if you've got that size list, you've probably got your own problems, truthfully, because getting that to work is tricky, right? It's whereas if you can just have more of a connection, more of an impact. Imagine if people replied to your marketing emails with thank you, with that is brilliant, with, I mean, we've got a client of ours, Amy, right? The other day, she posted in our group saying, I've started following your advice. I started emailing people every single day, which we'll get into in a minute. We started emailing people. I use the strategy you teach, and people are thanking me and saying how much they love receiving my emails, and they're marketing emails. Those emails have offers in them. So all of this is possible. It does not need to be a numbers game. You can actually have a deeper connection with people, and we're just using those very same skills.
Oh, I love that. That is, it doesn't have to be a numbers game, because that is one of people. I'll say that's like number one excuse for a lot of people. It's like, oh, but I don't have anybody on my list, right? I mean, and you just pretty much knock that excuse out of the park. I absolutely love it. And then I love, obviously, you know, I think I have a very specific question. Since you guys already were, you know, practicing with, you know, people's minds and all that stuff, you guys have a background on that. I think that's fascinating. And my question is, how much is it a science and how much is it an art, the email copywriting?
That's a great question. how much is it a science and how much is it an art? I think it's more art than science, actually, because I think a lot of the time you hear about the rules of email marketing, and a lot of the time, as long as you know what those rules are, then bending them and breaking them is totally okay. So we hear rules all the time, like you shouldn't email your list too often because otherwise they'll get disengaged. We email our list 365 times a year minimum. I suppose it's technically more than that because sometimes we'll do 3 emails in a day if we're closing a promotion, but it's an absolute bottom line minimum of 365. And every single one of them has an offer to buy something in it. So again, the rules would say you can't email your list too often because they'll get fed up. So we broke that and said, nope, you should email your list more often. And I think there is if you understand the basic rules of what makes people respond, what gets people's interest, what gets people's curiosity, then you, within that framework, you have the flexibility to veer outside of those lanes and try new and exciting things. And I'm not an artist by any means, but I always think of artists as being people who break creative rules and like go zany with things. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I've never thought about it before.
Yeah, no, I'm actually asking because I once was doing this copywriting course, and it was also just broke down into like the formulas, right? And then I look back at the newsletters that I love reading, and I'm like, dude, but these guys are so freaking creative, right? Like the way they write it has nothing to do with those formulas. So it just got me thinking, right?
100%, right? So, Fonzie, one of the big things is that we don't teach people how to be clones of us, how to write emails like we write them. We don't teach you formulas. Like, there are some formulas which kind of work, but what we really go into is, whether we're talking about this on our podcast or whether we're talking about it in our program, whatever, we talk about why that thing works. So you can then extrapolate the science behind it, the psychology behind it, and apply it, because there's nothing worse. Like if you go and see a really bad actor, right? And he's like just reading the words to be or not to be, that is like, it sounds awful and alien coming out of his mouth. What we need to do is figure out the person they meet on the podcast, on the live show, at your wherever they meet you, needs to be the same voice, needs to be the same person they read in the emails. So what we really obsess over is finding you, finding your personality, finding how your voice comes through, so you can be, I'm going to say that vomity word, here we go, brace yourself, authentic. Yeah.
Totally. And I think, you know, when people start, I think when people start out with anything, it starts off being formulaic, and that's perfectly okay. Like performers, we find a lot of performers, they start off by emulating somebody else that they look up to and respect. And then over time, and that's okay, that's kind of natural. And then over time, they find their own groove with it. And so for sure, email marketers do that as well.
Yeah, totally relate like 200% of the message that you guys are sharing right now, because, you know, I feel like as we work with either content creators and people that want to get started in this world, or they have their own business and they're jumping in, they want a fast, quick solution. Most of the time, it's like, I need it now, and then when that doesn't work, then they blame the system, right? And sometimes we got to look inside of us and be like, okay, am I putting the blame in something external, or do I actually need to look inside of myself and be like, have I even tried different things than what they've said? Like, that was a great base to get started because it motivated me or pushed me to take action. But now, once I'm starting to take action, what are those things that I need to start implementing or changing or adapting to keep going? So I asked you that question. Like, once people get going, what are those things?
So the big thing to begin with all of our businesses, right? And we talk about this on the Email Marketing Show, our podcast, we talk about in our Facebook group, we talk about it everywhere, is the strategy doesn't need to change. The strategy almost never needs to change. The tactics of how you're achieving the strategy are the things you need to change. So if your strategy is, we email daily, that is our strategy. The tactics of what you put in the emails, who the email comes from, what time of day, all the tactical elements, play with that stuff. But too many times, we as entrepreneurs, as business owners, go back to the top and reinvent the strategy. The thing is, the strategy will work if you just figure out the right tactics to make it work. But every time you change the strategy, you're also having to change all the tactics. So no wonder you're going round and round in circles. So choose a strategy, stop changing it, make the strategy work, and just change the tactics.
It's a bit like if you imagine somebody running in a race, right? And they get halfway around and they realize they're losing. And they, rather than change what they're doing, they go, hang on a minute, I'm going to go back to the beginning again. And they turn around and they walk all the way back to the beginning again. They go, right, let's try hopping this
or worse, Rob, or worse, they go and enter it. They go, I'm going to give up now. I'm going to go into a different race. And then they still run like crap. And they're like, oh, it's the race that's the problem. The race isn't the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And
that analogy was great.
I think that's like a nice punch in the gut. I'm not gonna lie, because we were there actually. We like that happened to us. You know, we started as a social media marketing agency, not knowing exactly what we do. We would like go offer something and then go back and Google how to do it, right? And then we went to a different business and they had different problems. And we're like, yes, we can actually do that. So again, starting the race all over.
We started a lot of races back then.
Yeah, a lot of them. And it actually wasn't until we decided to focus on one strategy, like you're saying, right? That things started to pick up. And I can see it. You told me that your baseline is 365 emails, right? And I love it. That's a strategy. Even daily emails. And then what you're talking about, this tactics, changing it. I think people need to actually write this down at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, people ask us, we have weekly meetings with the various people that we work with and stuff. And I had a friend I was meeting today. I meet every Monday. And she said, what are you doing? And I said, we're doing the same things that we always do. I've got nothing new to tell you. And she's like, and I'm like, that's a great thing, because we are still doing our Facebook group. So we've got our Facebook group. That's one really important part of what we do. We've got our podcast. That's an important part of what we do. We've got our email list, and we've got our Twitter. We don't do anything else. Like that, people are like, what's new? I'm like, nothing. And that's a win.
Yeah. I mean, why change what's working, right? And that's something, I don't know what people do that.
Why change what's not working? Because if you focus on the thing that's not working and make the damn thing work, you can make it work, rather than jumping to something else that you haven't figured out yet either. You're going to move from one thing you haven't figured out to something else you haven't figured out. That's a waste of time and energy, and usually money too. Yes, I haven't figured this thing out. Well, I can't move off it until I figure it out then.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, Kennedy, because just this morning we're on a call with a client and they're about to launch a product, right? And we're like, look, we need to prove that this works organically. We need to figure out a creative way to get people on it. And that way it doesn't hurt your pocket, right? So the conversation this morning, he's like, I spoke with this lady, you know, we went out of the way to actually chat with this lady that's great in digital marketing. And we were talking about Facebook ads. And I'm like, okay, do you have X amount of money to spend on Facebook ads and be okay with not getting any results? Because you haven't proven these things. So it could go either way. You could either knock it out of the park and we don't know, but you could also not get a return because we haven't proven this, right? Mm-hmm. So I think most of the time, a lot of people like focus on those problems way ahead because somebody else is doing, because somebody else told them to do it before they actually prove, you know, what's not working. In this case, they haven't even tried it first, right? Because if I launch this offer, or if I launch this product organically with people that I know, people that I connect with, my communities, see if it works. If it actually gets the results that you're gonna get, you are not in the moment to start tackling different things. So with that being said, like, what are some of the things that you guys see like around this topic with email? Like, what are those things that people want to take, you know, hey, I get it, I love email, this is a problem I want to tackle, but that's a problem like 5 years down the road. What are those things that people start doing like that? And then how do you bring them down to a reality so they can actually execute and move forward with actual results?
One of the things we definitely see happen is that people think that they can't start treating their list like it's got 100,000 or 1 million people in it when it's only got 100 people in it. So they're holding off for let's imagine they've got this 5-year goal of building an arbitrary list, like, I don't know, 100,000 people or something. And today, right now, at this very moment, they have 100 subscribers, and maybe 2 of them are like their parents and their brother, and that's a third one. So they've got, and then them with like 3 email addresses. So they've got like 94 real subscribers today, right here and now. They'll say, oh, but in 5 years' time, I'm going to have 100,000 subscribers because I'm going to work really hard, and then I can start emailing them properly. And you've got to realize when those 96, 94, whatever I said, when those 94 people receive your email, those individuals don't know how many other people you've got on your list. Like, they don't know that they're not the only one receiving it. Like, they don't know if your list had 1 million people on it. So I think a lot of the time people are pushing the responsibility for doing email marketing down the road for when they've got a list that they consider to be more worthwhile emailing. Whereas actually, we're seeing more and more that the smaller the list is, the easier it is to manage. You can definitely make great income from it. We think a golden number is like, if you get 5,000 subscribers, your list never needs to be bigger than that. Like, if they're the right subscribers and you clean it properly, and therefore you might have gone through 15 or 20,000 subscribers to get to those 5, because you're going to scrub out the ones that don't engage and all the rest of it. But if you can get to 5,000 people, for most people's businesses, your list doesn't have to be any bigger than that. Once it gets bigger than that, the management of it becomes a pain. So like, people are really pushing this thing down the line, this responsibility, because they're looking forward to when they have that list. Problem is, if you wait until you have a big list to start emailing them, then when you do, it comes so out of the blue. So like, you're slowly nurturing this list of 100 people and you never talk to them, and then it becomes 500 people and you never talk to them. It becomes 1,000 people, you never talk to them. Eventually it's, say, 10,000. Let's make it more manageable. Let's say it's 10,000 people. And suddenly you email them and start selling them stuff. They all go, whoa, who's this? Unsubscribe, unsubscribe, unsubscribe.
Yeah, they're definitely gonna forget they subscribe. I mean, I've been there. I've got those emails that I'm like, how do they even get a hold of my email? And I probably sign up like a few months back, right? I love it. I love it. And, you know, you were talking before a little bit about helping them find personality, right? Kind of like the word authenticity. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people, I'm playing devil's advocate here, you know, they're like, oh yeah, it's easy for you guys because you guys been there a while, you know, you're in the performance industry. So like, what does it take for someone to find their personality, right? To find that authenticity? What are some of the challenges that they go through to find that?
Do you know, it's amazing. Every time when somebody, you meet somebody and they're really cool, like, we're hanging out now, we're friends and we hang out and that's cool. But then as soon as you get behind the keyboard, you do your telephone voice. You go, hello, thank you for being on. Thank you, it's Donnie, it's lovely. Thank you. And we don't know why. When we do it, we suddenly turn into a novelist. Where, hello, it's J.K. Rowling, and it's, you know, whatever. But so we all do our telephone voice very quickly, right? So we have to just.
My wife hates the telephone voice. Just let me tell you. I asked her, like, have you listened to the show yet, baby? Like, it's 50 episodes down the. No, I hate your voice. I don't want to see that ever in my life. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate that. Sorry, I just had to say, continue. I am sorry. I interrupted.
Yeah, it is amazing. You're in conversation and you're having a chat, and then you're like, hello. You know, that's what happens. You suddenly, that's what happens with email, though. We all do it. We turn into that thing of, or because we're emulating, or because we think that's the right way to send email. Thing is, if you can just get over the fact that there is nobody has decided that that's how you have to write. Nobody. You can use short sentences. You can write the word but and an and at the beginning of a sentence, because that's how people talk. What you want to really do is, our aim, right, is we want people to say, I can hear your voice in my head when I read your emails. And that will be grammatically incorrect because we do not speak with good grammar. So don't try and write with good grammar. You're not writing to impress your English teacher from school. You're not trying to do that. You're trying to write to connect with real human beings. And if we know anything about teachers, they aren't human. No. But we know that that's not what it's about. That's about being academic, and the way you write as an academic is very different, has a very different, it's testing something different. We're testing connectivity. Some really good ways of doing it. First, record yourself, get a transcription done. There's lots of free services to get a transcription. Otter's a really good one that you guys have services you guys offer where you transcribe things for your clients. Get a transcription done and then just slightly neaten it up, because that's how you talk. That's the first one. Yeah. Second one that we use is, we call them isms, ISMS, isms. And that is to come up with Rob-isms, Kennedy-isms, to come up with different phrases that you say. So, for example, you'll know if you've got an email